Welcome everyone to my Twilight Cup meta simplified video. I'm making this video at the last hour due to the requests from many players in our community. And the infographic I'm using here is from a YouTuber whose channel name is Callmejake. I will link him in the description below. And I am pulling the stats and data from pvpoke. Major Twilight Cup meta is divided into 5 major groups, and those are from the top left. You can see Venomoth, Dustox, Golbat, the confusion users, and a flyer. And in the top right, you can see the Poison Darts, Alolan Muck, Drapion, and Skuntank. Bottom left, you see the dark types Tyranitar, Sableye, Alolan Raticate, and Umbreon. And bottom right, you see the charm users. Now, most of the Twilight Cup videos are mostly outdated and most infographics are outdated, but this is a really updated cup meta simplified infographic. Really good job by Callmejake. Please check him out. And in the last Twilight Cup there was no charm wasn't even added to the game, and many moves weren't present like earth power, acid spray. So the meta changed quite a lot. Alolan Muck wasn't as good before as it is now, and all charm users have taken up the group. Before it was only Azumarill and Alolan Ninetales, the only fairies viable in Twilight Cup, but now many charm users, Wigglytuff, Togekiss, and Clefable are really viable now. And to the left side of the infographic, you can see wildcards and specialists. I will get to them later. But first, let's talk about confusion users and flyers. Now, in the pvpoke Twilight Cup rankings, you can see that Golbat is actually ranked number 1 with a 98.9 average score. It's a really good lead. Not so good of a closer, but attacker and defender. It's a really good attacker and defender. Now, most people usually use Wing Attack, Poison Fang, and Shadow Ball. That's the most common set. Some people like to use Omnus Wind for shield baiting and spam, which is viable, but I personally prefer Shadow Ball. Some people like to use Air Cutter for specific matchups like Venomoth and Dustox, and the grass types in the specialists. I will get back to on it later. And return, I tested out return Golbat and I didn't like it as much. Return doesn't really do much damage. Golbat's key matchups are Toxicroak, Muck, Kanto Muck. I'm not really sure about Kanto Muck's matchup, because Kanto Muck does learn Thunder Punch. It has really positive matchups versus Wigglytuff, Alolan Muck, and Sableye. But Alolan Muck does, I think, bait it. Depends on the shielding matchups. And Golbat only loses to Tyranitar, Frostlass, Umbreon. Now, Frostlass is a good specialist, but it's not really used as much. Tyranitar is really rare in our community, but Frostlass and Umbreon is quite common, and Alolan Raticate instead of Umbreon is also really common. And Golbat has bad matchups against them, but Golbat has positive matchups against one of the most strongest Mon in this cup, which is Toxicroak. Infographic is a little bit off because Golbat doesn't really beat Venomoth. Now, Venomoth has really good matchups versus Tentacruel, Alolan Muck, the Kanto Muck, Toxicroak. Venomoth will basically delete Toxicroak, and it has positive matchups against Kanto Muck, and I won't even mention Haunter. Now the infographic is a little bit off because Venomoth doesn't really beat Golbat. I think his sims were off, and Venomoth only loses to Tyranitar and other dark types that aren't really viable. Now let's get into Venomoth's matchup. I will show you Venomoth's matchup now. Most people usually run the Poison Fang and Shadow Ball set, so I'm going to use it, and I'm going to keep Poison Fang on Venomoth because it doesn't really matter as much. Now at no shielding scenarios, Golbat will obviously win because Shadow Ball will one-shot Venomoth. In 1 shields and 2 shield scenario, Venomoth will actually beat Golbat and have quite a bit of HP left. As you can see, it's got a half a Silver Wind and Poison Fang already charged after beating Golbat. Even if it tanked the Poison Fang, it wouldn't really beat Venomoth. Now at 2 shield scenario, Venomoth wins even more versus Golbat. You basically shield 2 Poison Fangs and Confusions will do 18 damage per hit, and it will just wear down Golbat with just Confusions. A really good but underrated pick is Dustox in the first group. Dustox has actually good matchups versus both Golbat and Venomoth. Now Dustox runs Confusion, Silurian, Sludge Bomb. Dustox is, you need 100% lucky Dustox. You need lucky to save Dust obviously, and you need 100% IVs to make it more viable, but still a lucky over 86% is, I think it's good enough. The main thing is Dustox in the Sims doesn't really beat Venomoth, but what you do is, if you are, suppose you are using Dustox against a Venomoth. Now according to the Sims, Venomoth has mostly winning matchups. Venomoth wins in the 1 shield matchup only and draws in the 0 shields, but you can actually win against Venomoth Mirror by doing this. I will show you. In the sandbox mode, that you shield the first Poison Fang and you don't use the Silver Wind. That way you feign down Venomoth with just Confusions. You burn 1 shield and you don't use any charge attacks, and you can see that both that Dustox has 5 HP left and has Silver Wind and Sludge Bomb charged. So suppose you're facing Dustox and Venomoth Mirror, you can win Venomoth Mirror by shielding once and not using any charge moves. And suppose your opponent switches in Poison Dark or Dark type, which in actuality will beat Venomoth and Dustox, but Silver Wind would do a lot of damage to them, so you can burn shields. Silver Wind will basically one-shot T-Tar and will do huge chunks of damage to Faticate and Umbreon. And if they switch in Poison Dart like Drapion, Muk or Skuntank, Silver Wind would do a lot of damage. And if this switches in a Fairy, you can just Sludge Bomb nuke them. So either they have to sack their Mon if they aren't prepared for Dustox, or they have to burn a shield. So you are burning 1 shield, you are winning the mirror versus Dustox and Venomoth, and you are burning your opponent's shield and you are getting a switch advantage on them. So this is how you actually play Dustox and Venomoth. Both, even if you're using Venomoth and Venomoth Mirror, you can still do the same thing. But if Venomoth doesn't have Poison Fang, it would basically do nothing to the fairies if your opponent switches in a fairy, and which your opponent will most likely do. because it won't switch in a toxic rock because that is weak. It won't switch in a dark type because your opponent knows that you can silver wind it. Your opponent most likely will switch in a fairy, which usually resists Venomoth's move apart from Poison Fang, which is legacy. So Dustox is a not so budget legacy Venomoth. Now we move on to the second group, which is the Poison Darks. Now Poison Darks, there are Drapion, Skuntank, and Alolan Muck. Skuntank will beat by Drapion because most people in this cup are running by Drapion. Infestation in general is a really good move, but in this cup Infestation isn't as viable because Infestation would do basically nothing against other types and would put Drapion at a huge disadvantage. So the usual Drapion set is Bite, Aqua Tail, Crunch, and Skuntank runs Poison Jab, Flamethrower, Crunch. Now you can run Poison Fang, Poison Jab, Flamethrower, Sludge Bomb, or Sludge Bomb, Crunch, or Flamethrower, Sludge Bomb. You can basically run Skuntank in 3 different sets, whichever you like. I am still not sure which set to run, so let's test it on. So Skuntank beats Drapion at the 1 shield, at 0 shields. You use a flamethrower, you tank the Aqua Tail, and you go for Crunch. You can go for repeated crunches too, and if you don't have crunches, you can go for repeated flamethrowers. In one shield, in equal shielding scenarios, 1 shield, Skuntank actually draws with Drapion. So with 1 shield remaining, you can draw against Drapion, and with double shield, Skuntank wins against it straight up wins against Drapion. Now Skuntank's matchups versus Alolan Muck. Alolan Muck usually runs Poison Jab, Dark Pulse, and Acid Spray. Acid Spray is one of the most common sets in Alolan Muck. Now Skuntank beats Alolan Muck in both 1 shield and 2 shield scenarios. It only draws in 0 shields. So again, this infographic not exactly accurate, but it's the closest thing to the meta. Now the dark types, Alolan Raticate is actually a really good option because if you have Last Resort Umbreon, then Umbreon is the king of dark types, and if not, Alolan Raticate with Quick Attack, Crunch, and Hyper Fang acts as a budget Last Resort Umbreon and beats Golbat, Drapion, Haunter, Venomoth, Umbreon, and it is countered by obviously Toxic Rock and the Charm users. So Alolan Raticate has really positive matchups versus a Poison Dark, the Venomoths, and Golbat. Alolan Raticate will straight up wall Golbat because it double or triple resists ghosts. It can also beat Sableye in the group. Although Tyranitar can beat Alolan Raticate, but still Raticate has really good coverage. Now Tyranitar is ranked 8 in pvpoke, and I don't want to talk about it as much because Tyranitar is extremely rare in our communities, and most people won't run Tyranitar because they don't have access to it, the SmackDown variant. But I do know 2 or 3 people who actually do. So SmackDown Tyranitar has winning matchups versus Golbat, Venomoth, and Tentacruel, one of the 3 top 10 picks in the Twilight meta. Tyranitar can win against them, but you have to shield Hydro Pump, and Silver Wind, because one Silver Wind will basically one shot you. Now you'll be hardwalled by Toxicroak, and the charm users will basically delete any and every dark types. And speaking of charm users, let's see a few matchups of the fairy types. Now Azumarill is one of the best fairy types in the fairy group, not the charm group, the fairy group. And Azumarill actually beats Golbat, Tyranitar, Drapion, Venomoth, and Umbreon. So again, Azumarill has extremely good matchups versus them, and with energy advantage, Azumarill can beat Toxicroak. But you need energy advantage and shields, because a Sludge Bomb will put you in KO range, and Azumarill only loses to Tentacruel, Quillfish, which are specialists, and the grass types. So the grass types are specialists. That's why the Venusaur and Victreebel are specialists to counter the fairy types, mainly Azumarill, Wigglytuff, and Clefable, and also Togekiss, and it can beat dark types, although it loses to Confusion and Poison dark types. But they have really good matchups versus 2 of the 5 major meta groups. Azumarill's matchup against the rest of the meta. Now Azumarill, I would suggest everyone to run Ice Beam and Player of Set, because Ice Beam can one-shot Golbat, really do heavy damage to Venomoth, Dustox, and do Shield Bait, and knock out Togekiss and Grass types. Ice Beam is just a really versatile move. And on Clefable, I suggest Meteor Mash and Psychic with Charm. You can run Dazzling Gleam. Moonblast isn't a really good move, but you can run Dazzling Gleam. And I saw a few people running Play Rough and Hydro Pump set, and a few people running Ice Beam and Hydro Pump set, but I don't actually suggest that, because although with Hydro Pump you have nuking potential, shields down like Tentacruel, but with Hydro Pump you don't get to bait that shield and have more losing match versus Toxicroak. Now with Charm, Clefable actually beats out Azumarill in the 0 shields and 2 shield scenario. Azumarill only wins in the 1-1 shielding scenario, and it wins with 2 HP, so I don't really think it's a win for Azumarill actually. So, and Wigglytuff can't beat Azumarill. The infographic again isn't as accurate, but Clefable will beat Azumarill and Togekiss, and Clefable will win against the Poison Darks. Now Azumarill will mostly lose against Poison Darks, apart from energy advantage. Now let's check out Clefable's matchup with Poison Darks. I'm showing this because they are part dark. Now it has the worst matchup versus Skuntank, because Skuntank and Alolan Muck runs Poison Jab. But against Drapion, take my word, it will win against Drapion. But Skuntank will lose in the 1 shielding scenario. If you can see, Clefable has 16 HP left. A Meteor Mash charge and another Charm will charge up Psychic. So in equal shielding scenario, Clefable will win, and it won't get to you won't get to 2 shields, because Skuntank will die before that from Charm. Although Skuntank can win with in 0 shielding scenario, but Skuntank loses in both 1 shielding and 2 shielding scenarios. So against Poison Darks, you have to use at least 1 shield, and then you have Meteor Mash or Psychic charged for the next one. And against Toxicroak, you just have to shield a Sludge Bomb, and then you can just beat Toxicroak with Charm. So Charm users are actually extremely good here. because charm users do win against both dart types, poison dart types, depending on shields, with one shields against poison dart types, and against toxic rogue easily. So I'm really liking the charm users, and the Venomoth Dustox group will beat the charm users. If Venomoth is legacy, it can beat the charm users, but I don't think without legacy it really beats them. You have to spam Silverwind. You have to keep on spamming shield Silverwinds, and it comes down to a shielding matchup. And Golbat actually wins against the fairies, apart from Azumarill, because Azumarill is so tanky that it can tank up to 3 or even 4 Poison Fangs from Golbat. So Azumarill is the only fairy that doesn't lose to Golbat, and the rest of the fairies lose against Golbat. Now let's talk about Toxic Rogue. Toxic Rogue is such a vital part of this meta because it straight up beats the dark types and the poison dart types, but Toxic Rogue isn't as polarizing as it used to be because of the charm users. The charm users didn't exist in the previous Twilight Cup meta. Toxic Rogue had only 3 groups to face: the Venomoth group, the Dart group, and the Poison Dart group, and it beat out 2 of the 3 major group that was present then. It does win against 2 major groups, but loses hard to Confusion. Confusion 3, 4 or 5 Confusions will delete Golbat. I'm sorry, Toxic Rogue will delete Toxic Rogue, and Toxic Rogue will lose against the Charm users. But Toxic Rogue has good matchups versus Azumarill if you are running the Poison Jab variant of Toxic Rogue. Now here Toxic Rogue has winning matchups against the Poison Darks and the Dark types, and will lose against any Confusion user. Now let's talk about the specialists. Now the specialist Quillfish, let's start with Quillfish, is a really neutral mon. It's neutral against basically anything in this meta because it uses Water Gun and Aqua Tail to spam, and Ice Beam and Acid Spray. You can run Ice Beam or Acid Spray depending on your preference. I prefer Acid Spray, but you can also run Ice Beam. Ice Beam really doesn't hit anything as hard apart from Nidoking and Nidoqueen. I will get back to them later. But Quillfish is a really underrated but good specialist. It's a specialist for burning shields in neutral scenarios and will lose only to grass types, Razor Leafers especially, and the Confusion users. Apart from that, Quillfish doesn't really lose. Nothing really walls Quillfish apart from Tentacruel and whatnot. Now, getting to Tentacruel is actually ranked one of the highest. Tentacruel is actually ranked number 2 in the Twilight Cup meta, and it's because shields down, Tentacruel can sweep any team present in the meta. No team present here in the Twilight Cup can tank a full Hydro Pump after a few poison jabs. So nothing. Everything will get one shot apart from, I think, Azumarill and Umbreon. I think tanks Hydro Pump because Azumarill resists Hydro Pump and Umbreon is just that tanky. But for them, Tentacruel has Acid Spray to lower down their defense and beat them out. But to get Tentacruel to work, you need to burn your opponent's shields. So with Tentacruel, you have to do is, in your lead and mid game, you have to pick mons that can burn shields like Golbat, Toxic Rogue. Azumarill is also a really good pair up with Tentacruel, and also Quillfish, wink wink, is an extremely good pair up with Tentacruel because Quillfish will burn any shields. Quillfish and Frostlass, extremely good shield burners. Their speciality is burning shields. Their speciality isn't really countering a specific mon. Their speciality is burn shields in neutral scenarios, because Quillfish and Frostlass are mostly neutral versus everything in this meta. Now with Frostless you run Powder Snow, Avalanche, Shadow Ball. You don't run Crunch. Crunch is bad. Just bad, don't even consider it. Avalanche will hit everything in this cup really hard. Everything, almost everything apart from those who resist Avalanche. And you can nuke Azumarill with Shadow Ball, and you can basically nuke anything with Shadow Ball apart from the Poison Darts. And against Poison Darts you use Avalanche. Now Frostless has extremely good matchups versus Golbat, Venomoth, Skuntank, Toxicroak, and Alolan Marowak. Now Alolan Marowak I don't feel is as good in this cup, because it really doesn't counter anything apart from the poison types, the poison dart types to be precise. It doesn't really counter Venomoth and Dustox, and it mainly counters pure poison and poison darts. Apart from that, I don't think it has really good positive matchups against the meta. And Frostless is only walled by Mawile and Drapion. Drapion with the bite variant of Drapion will absolutely crush Frostless in seconds. So using Frostless, you have to be careful of bite users, and you don't have to really worry about anything. You just go in and spam your avalanches. Alolan Ninetales is one of also the wildcards. It's like Frostless, but with Psyshock and Ice Beam. With Psyshock it can beat poison types, or it can bait out shield of poison types, and with Ice Beam it has great coverage. You can also run Dazzling Gleam, but I don't prefer running Dazzling Gleam. It has really good matchups versus Golbat, Umbreon, Drapion, Quillfish, and Sableye. So Alolan Ninetales I would say is a niche pick. And the top counters of Alolan Ninetales is Houndoom, Viper, Tyranitar, Tentacruel, and Azumarill. Now Venusaur and Victreebel also have their niche in this cup. And what their niche is, they beat Azumarill and they beat Tentacruel and Quillfish. So Tentacruel and Quillfish don't really have hard counters apart from Venomoth and Dustox. The confusion users actually, they hard counter Quillfish and Tentacruel with shields. Again with shields down, Tentacruel can just hydro pump one shot Venomoth. So you have to always keep into consideration that to win against Tentacruel you do need shields, whether you're using anything. So Venusaur and Victreebel both can beat out Quillfish, Tentacruel, and Azumarill and the Fairy types. So they are specialized to counter the Fairy types. A few Dark types like Umbreon, it has key matchups against Umbreon and Tyranitar, and it will beat most of the charm users, but will lose against poison darts and the poison flyers. As you know, it's okay. But Venusaur and Victreebel, I'm telling you guys, watch out for Venusaur and Victreebel. If you get caught off guard by a Victreebel can literally shred your team if you aren't ready for it. Now that goes for the grass types. Now let's see Nidoqueen and Nidoking. Now Nidoqueen and Nidoking is viable now only because of Earth Power. It wasn't really viable back when Twilight Cup first came out. It was mentioned but wasn't really viable, but now I think it's really viable. It's almost like they're like Tentacruel, shields down. Nidoqueen and King both can one shot basically anything in this meta. Shields down, and if your opponent doesn't have a huge energy advantage against you, Nidoqueen and Nidoking has really good matchups against Tentacruel, Tyranitar, Muk, and Toxicroak. It can beat Toxic. It can one-shot Toxicroak with Earth Power. So you need that Earth Power, and you need to bait out shields in order for them to work. They're like Tentacruel. You need to bait down their shields, and will lose against Golbat, Sableye, and Frostless. Frostless will win because of their Ice typing, and Golbat will win because Nidoqueen. All of Nidoqueen's moves are resisted by Golbat apart from Stone Edge. Now, what I suggest everyone using is Poison Jab, Earth Power, and Stone Edge. Extremely high coverage. It's nuke. It's basically a nuke. And let's see, Nidoking with Fury Cutter will get to Earth Power the fastest. It can get to Earth Power and Mega Horn, although I prefer Stone Edge for the bug types, the Venomoth and Dustox and Golbat. So, although Nidoking gets to Earth Power if you have the Legacy Fury Cutter variant, but it doesn't really match up too well. I prefer Nidoqueen over Nidoking. And lastly, I'm going to talk about Muk. This is the Kanto Muk. Now, Muk got a revamp in his movesets. Thunder Punch got added with Acid Spray, and now it is an extremely good pick. Muk will beat out any flyers, Azumarill, Quillfish, and Tentacruel. You know that Quillfish is a really good shield baiter and whatnot, and Tentacruel is Tentacruel is the best finisher in the Twilight Cup meta, and Muk straight up beats them with Thunder Punch and Dark Pulse. But you can also run Thunder Punch and Acid Spray, and I have seen people running Dark Pulse and Acid Spray, but if you're running Dark Pulse and Acid Spray, I would prefer them using the Alolan Muk, not the Kanto Muk. But the one thing Kanto Muk has over Alolan Muk is it's not weak to Charm. Alolan Muk is really weak to, not really weak, it's neutral to Charm. So with one shielding scenarios, Alolan Muk will lose against Charm users and fairies. Again, in one shielding scenario. But Kanto Muk doesn't have that weakness. Kanto Muk straight out beats all fairies, and it beats Skuntank. So Alolan Muk again, I feel, has his niche, and Alolan Muk, Venusaur, Victreebel, I feel are really good picks, really good specialists. I wouldn't put Alolan Muk in the wildcard zone because it really doesn't. Nothing really extreme hard walls it. So I would put Kanto Muk in actually the specialists section, and that was basically the overview of the Twilight Cup meta. Now I would suggest everyone to practice more and more, practice with good opponents, practice against all these matchups and know your matchups, know how to count and not get shield baited, and knowing your matchups and using the top 6 mons and the best mons possible with the highest amount of coverage won't win you the game. Knowing your matchups, practicing, under tapping, and baiting out your opponent, predicting your opponent will eventually win you the game. So I wish everyone a very good luck on their Twilight Cup in the upcoming Friday. This was Bhuvan Ahmed signing out.